everybody, and welcome to another edition of Writer to Writer with Russell Lit. I'm Jennifer McMahon, co-editor-in-chief, and I'm joined today by Patrick Holloway, who's a well-known Irish writer. Patrick, great to see you.
Great to see you too. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Good, thanks. So Patrick is going to just give a little bit about Patrick. I'm going to introduce his book, his debut novel, The Language of Remembering. So Patrick Holloway is a prize-winning Irish writer of fiction and poetry. His debut novel, The Language of Remembering, was published in 2025 to great critical acclaim. His second novel is forthcoming in 2027 with Eriu. His work appears in The Stinging Fly, The Moth, The London Magazine, Southword, The Irish Times, and The Irish Independent. He is the winner of the Bath Short Story Prize, the Keane Creative Writing Prize, the Raymond Carver Contest, the Flash 500, among others. He is an editor of the literary journal The Four-Faced Liar and is the 2026 Writer-in-Residence in Maynooth University. Quite an accomplished writer.
Thank you. It's been a long time, though. All of those accolades come over years and years and years of persistence and rejection and everything else that goes with writing.
Absolutely. So, The Language of Remembering. Returning from Brazil with his wife and daughter, Oisín is looking to rebuild a life in Ireland and reconnect with his mother, Bridget, who has early onset Alzheimer's. As her condition deteriorates, she starts to speak Irish, the language of her youth, and reflect on her childhood dreams and aspirations. Mother and son embark on a journey of personal discovery, and as past traumas are exposed, they begin to understand what has shaped them and who they really are. The Language of Remembering asks how we connect to the people we love and how we move on from the past to find meaning in the present. So perhaps we start with a reading, Patrick, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, no bothers. I'm going to read a part. So there's two narrators in the book, and it splits between them both. So it goes between then and now. So I'm going to read a section from now, which is when Oisín is in an Irish class and he's trying to learn Irish to connect with his mum again. And I suppose the only thing you need to know at this point is that Oisín's narrative is in the second person. So it's you. So you might be hearing a lot of yous in this reading. The game begins when the rest of the students arrive. The objective is to say 3 things about yourself. 2 of them are true and 1 of them is false. Then you throw the ball to someone and they have to guess which one is false. You are nervous because you cannot think of what to say and really want to use these classes to find the words you have to say. But it is week 7 and still you haven't said in Irish, mother, memory, grief. There is a woman with a pointy face who starts. You cannot say what exactly it is that makes it pointy, because when you focus on her nose or her chin, they do not look overly pronged, but the umbrella of all of her features makes her look indignant and aciculate. She throws the ball to you and you can only understand one of the things she said, which is she lived abroad for a year. And even though you think it's true, you say it's false, but can't remember the word for false, so just say it in English. And then she answers no, that it is not false, and that she actually lived in France and speaks 4 languages. What was false about her was she had once owned a bakery. You didn't know the word for that. It is your turn and your heart thickens. The sensation reminds you of being a teenager, afraid your voice would break while having to read Heaney's Digging aloud in assembly one morning. It had been a punishment for something, and you had read the poem 100 times before having to stand up and read it aloud. And each time you read it, you thought of your father, his pen scrawling letters in leather-bound notebooks. You wonder where they could be now and think of asking your mother again. And even though you know the word for notebook, you do not know if you could put it in a question. Well then, Sean says in Irish and smiles at you. Well, you say. Well, you say again, and for the life of you, you cannot think of any truth you feel like sharing. The only lie that comes to you is that your father is still alive, but that doesn't seem appropriate. Sometimes it feels like the truth. You think he is alive somewhere, for his death is a memory that is not complete and therefore not completely real. At so many moments through your life, you have imagined him just too far away. And when you, on the rare occasion, say, I wish my dad could be here, in your head, you imagine him alive elsewhere, wishing too that he could be there. I have one daughter, you say in Irish, and picture your daughter's face, probably getting impatient already, refusing to go to bed without you. You think of the stillbirth, your baby boy, who had the name of your father. They all look at you, waiting for the next truth or lie, but your mind will not sit still. You try to stop yourself, but start looking at each of them, making shot-fire stories up in your head. The large man who wears a vested jacket is a farmer. His brothers are at familiar war over the land and speak about him in Irish in the darkness of night. That kind, teapot-looking lady is a recent widow who finds ways to forget. The guy who is around the same age as you, who can grow a full feathery beard, needs Irish for a government job, one he will spend years at until finally he is able to retire. He will look back on the days like ripples that never rippled. You stand up and kind of smile. You cough a little and go to say something, but nothing comes. You feel language float away. It is like letting go of a kite. It is not the weight that you cannot feel, but the sense of holding on. The sound in the room has vacuumed elsewhere, and you see Sean's mouth move in moon shapes. They all look like memories or remembering a dream from years ago. You feel like this has happened before countless times, and you are just reliving it, moving your body from beneath string. You feel your left foot take a step backwards, and with that, your body turns. You are leaving the room until you realize you are still holding the ball. So you turn back round, bend down, and roll it gently back into the circle. I think I'll stop it there.
Absolutely beautiful. I was just reading along with you there. There was so many lines jumped out at me. I mean, the prose is gorgeous. The setting is it's beautiful, Patrick. Absolutely gorgeous. And my response to your work, I left you a message when I finished. I was in tears.
Yes, it was a
trying to hold them back. It was, I cried for the last 5 chapters. And I think that's wonderful that a book resonates so deeply with the reader, and it feels alive and it feels lived, and that it rings so true. Because my mother had Alzheimer's and died from it. And what's interesting about the language, as I read in the blurb there, Bridget starts to speak Irish.
Yeah.
And my mother, I remember when they came along to assess her, and one of the ladies held up a pen and said, "What's this called?" My mother said, "Pion Louis," the Irish for pen. Her mind was going back there. So it rang so true to me that, the trying to find a way to express oneself, that when the mind is distorted and fractured, and it's
and it's exactly that. And like the responses from readers have been lovely and amazing, and a lot of them have been very touching, just like yours. But a lot of people who have read the book, in different places have come up to me and said, it's so strange because my grandfather or my mother or my aunt or whoever it might be, they had dementia, they had Alzheimer's, and they started speaking French or whatever language it might be. And the people around them didn't even know that they had that second language. So it's a lot. And I did a lot of research into, obviously, language and identity and memory and identity and language and memory and all of these things. And a lot of it is that, when the mind does start to go, a lot of it does go back to childhood or to those kind of memories. And if there was another language present in those days, like a lot of people with Irish, then that seems to come fresher to the surface than more recent memories and language. So it is very, it's been great to see like that response from readers. And obviously when you're telling a story as delicate and I suppose as fragile as you said of this, you really want to do it justice. I would hate for someone to read the book and be like, that's not what happens at all. You know what I mean? Or like you who just said that to me, like with the idea of the pen, that is affirming for me. And I feel like I've done something that I set out to do, which, as you know, as a writer, sometimes it's not that easy,
It's a very beautiful book, and I think you definitely honoured the experience of so many people, so the principal characters, we have Oisín, we have Nina, his wife, we have Bridget, his mother, we have James, her husband, Oisín's father, we have Eilish, little Eilish, who's the daughter of Oisín and Nina. And two timelines. You have Bridget's timeline as she's dwelling in her past. You have Oisin trying to deal with his present, which is difficult. Both are dealing with difficulties
Yes.
and challenges. So what was your initial vision for this novel?
It's my initial vision. I think when I think of novel, not now, maybe not now, but before, especially when writing, because I had written a novel before The Language of Remembering that went out on submission and was kind of half picked up by another publisher, which then ceased to exist here in Ireland. So I'd written that novel, and then I wrote The Language of Remembering. But I remember when writing The Language of Remembering, I didn't sit down to write a novel. I knew, like my agent said, let's start writing something new. And I knew that a novel would come. But at that point in my writing career, if I looked at a novel, if I thought of a novel, it just seemed too big. I couldn't get it into focus, if that makes sense. Like, it was too big for my mind. And it was more like a barrier. And again, it's process, we're all learning as we write, from story to story, from novel to novel. So at that point, I was living in Brazil, and obviously I speak Portuguese, but it was a difficult process to learn Portuguese, or I thought it would be easier. Maybe it wasn't that difficult, but I thought it would be easier. And a lot of my writing was about language and identity and this otherness, like I was suddenly the gringo everywhere I went. So I was always kind of on the outside, even though they were welcoming and lovely, but I just felt like, when am I going to get into this sameness? When can I show who I really am? Because at the moment I'm the gringo, I'm, kind of like a novelty person around them or something. So I was writing a lot about language and identity, and obviously being Irish and growing up learning Irish in a flawed system and never becoming fluent. I was thinking about that. The more I became fluent in Portuguese, the more I thought, and I was worried. I kind of felt guilt for not learning Irish. And I set out to write a short story, which is principally, it won the Bath Short Story Prize, and a lot of it was that scene. So I like to read that because that was the genesis of the book. And the story was about a guy, his wife is in Dublin for work. He's got a babysitter in, so he can go to this Irish class. And the daughter, Ailish, is starting to learn. I don't think she was called Ailish at that point, but anyway, now she's Ailish, was starting to learn sounds, and he could understand her through so many different ways, and it wasn't language. And then he goes to this class, and it finishes very differently. The short story, he goes to visit the mother in the short story. So it started out as a short story, and then Oisin's voice didn't leave me. That second person, I do love a second person narration, and I was living in Porto Alegre in Brazil, and I was walking the streets and doing my stuff, and I could hear I could hear Oisin still in my head. So I started writing around him and more of him to release him from me, to give me a break. And then I was like, okay, this is something. This has the bones of a narrative here, like a bigger narrative with more themes and, subtext and different kind of, then the idea of the moving home became a thing. Anyway, so I started to have more, but then I didn't have Bridget. So the more I got into Oisin, the more I realized that I knew Bridget only at that level of her life. And I like to know my characters deeply. I like to spend so much time with them. My wife thinks I'm crazy sometimes. I talk about them as if they are real people. And, and I do feel when I finish something, there's a grief or there's like a sadness in me that I won't get to spend more time with them. So I started writing things around Bridget, like, okay, who was she in 70s Ireland? Like I knew in my head, I knew a certain backstory, but it didn't give me enough of her. Like, who was she? Because she had to have been brave, and she had to have been, a certain type of person to do what she did. And then I realized, well, to do that, who were her parents who allowed that to happen in a small rural village? And then I got Kathleen, which is Oisin's grandmother and Bridget's mother, who I absolutely love. And once I kind of found her character, I think, I realized there was a narrative for Bridget. And then that's where the dual timeline kind of found its form.
Novels, like I know my own experience of writing novels, it's really an evolutionary process, isn't it? It's, it's the and it's every novelist and every story, every novel is an experiment.
Yeah, exactly. And
We're
I
kind
like,
of,
you know, you've been around as well at festivals, and you hear, like, I've heard so many different writers last year and their process. And it's one of the things I like to, you know, to exemplify and to emphasize is that every writer is different, you know. Who was I talking to? Somebody recently said that they have to, who was it? They have to live with it so much and so much and so much in their head that they know everything before they sit. Billy O'Callaghan, I went to an event with Billy O'Callaghan, and he said he just spends so much time in his head with everything that when he starts writing, he's editing as he's going and he knows the whole story. I could never write like that. You know, I think if I spent that much time doing it, then maybe I'm like, then I don't need to write it. Or I don't know, it's something like I'm living through it. You know, like there's certain parts of the language, remembering one part in particular, and I didn't know it was going to happen until it was actually happening. Like it dawned on me, and I got really upset. I was like, oh, I can't believe I'm doing this. You know, like it was something to me, like I was genuinely upset. And I think those emotions in me are important for me to get them on the page, if that makes sense.
yeah, and I think we're talking about writing through exploration, really, that the story reveals itself, and Neil Hegarty spoke to me about that as well. That
He's brilliant as well, yeah.
oh yeah, amazing. And that's kind of how I write myself. Let the story, let the characters tell me the story, let them guide me, let them draw me through.
Yeah.
And I think I like them to tell me what's coming next. You know, I like to discover what's coming next, like as much as if I was a reader. You know, or you know, it's because it keeps it fresh, keeps the excitement, and
Yeah,
there's always surprises.
absolutely. Yeah.
You know, so let me see the debut author experience.
It, it's a lot. Um, so it's twofold. I absolutely loved it. I would imagine that for writers, like I'm very much an extrovert, so I'm an extrovert person. My introvert moments come through writing and reading, you know. Like I can't just stay by myself, to be honest. I annoy the hell out of myself. Like, so I have to be with my friends and family and whatever. So I think I really, really enjoyed the whole public aspect of festivals and interviews and podcasts, and you know, all of that fed into something that gives me energy, you know. And even so, it can be draining. There were moments I was like, okay, here we go. Do you know, like it is. I think the main thing that I learned about having a novel out, and it's a slow kind of, you don't really know what you're feeling until it's kind of all done. And it's only retrospectively I'm looking back, I'm like, okay, so that was why that happened. And that's what that, you know, you kind of connect the dots. And it comes through the lens of we're artists in an industry. And I think that industry is a strange one to be in, you know, not always kind, not always fair, but that is the way of it, you know. And I think when you understand that at the end of the day, we are trying to produce brilliant writing that can hopefully be considered art. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to write something that will, you know, hold its own and will continue hopefully after I'm gone or whatever that might be. And you're doing that within a structure that is not particularly trying to do that. So the end games can be quite different. So I think like from start to finish, it's been the most amazing experience. But I suppose we all have certain expectations. You know, we think certain things might happen, and within the structures that are there, it's not possible for that maybe to come into fruition. But like the best part for me was meeting other writers, you know, like I've met writers who I've never known, like I maybe didn't know about them or their books, and I've been introduced to that, which has been amazing. And I've been introduced to new writers who are now my favorite writers. I have met idols, let's say, like I have met writers. We were talking about Donal Ryan before this happened. I mean, I got an email from Donal Ryan about the book, and I did not know Donal Ryan. He's always been one of my favorite writers. And I got an email from him saying, "Dear Patrick, I'm reading your book," and something like, "I'm blown away," or whatever. And I was driving my car home, and I was just like, I was mind boggled. I couldn't believe that I got an email from Donal Ryan. And then I think that night he sent me just like quite a long email. And it was one of the most beautiful emails. I keep saying I have to print it out and frame it. So that for me was kind of like, it's not like, I kind of didn't care then. I was so nervous about the reaction. This is way before it was published. This is proof, and lots of things changed from the proof to the final version. I kind of thought, well, if Donal Ryan thinks it's good, then I don't care what anyone else thinks, So then but there's the fear, then you hold that for a while. And I got loads of more beautiful endorsements from writers I absolutely love. And then I remember the first time the review, I think the first review was in the Irish Times. And I was a mess going to the local news agents here to buy the paper, kind of opening it up and and you can't really read it because and then obviously it was one of the kindest. It was a beautiful, brilliant review from a brilliant writer, and now the laureate for fiction in Ireland. I mean, it was just, so all of those things kind of build up, and it's trying to remember those things as well. I think as writers, or as it's very, not even as writers, I think as human nature, we feel the highs quite quickly, and we can hold on to the lows that little bit longer. So it's kind of like trying to remind myself, or any writer out there, trying to remind yourselves of that feeling of getting shortlisted for a prize for the first time, or seeing your name in print for the first time. And all of these things are massive. We have the Four Face Library, we receive 1,800 submissions every window for maybe 25 pieces. If you get a kind email from an editor, that's huge. It's just such, and that is the industry that we live in, So that's the idea again of being artists in an industry and trying to fit into what space that allows us to.
And space is kind of important because there are so many people writing now, far more than even 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's so difficult to carve. Well, maybe not difficult, but it's challenging to carve out a space and a niche and and
not just another thing that I was talking to someone about, because I'm going to be doing some workshops and stuff this year in different locations and things. And one of the things that I found, I've taught lots of workshops since I moved back to Ireland, and I find that I think it should be spoken about more, that writing can be a hobby. It can be an activity that people enjoy. So I play tennis. I play tennis quite well. There are people in my tennis club who have been down there playing tennis on their Tuesday and Thursday nights for 30 years. And they're the same grade, and they enjoy their tennis, and they enjoy the hour and a half on the court, and they enjoy the talk afterwards, and they might go for a drink or coffee or whatever. And it's a really healthy, safe space where people can do something that they love. And I think that this has to be spoken about more in workshops, because genuinely there are people who go to writing groups and libraries and all of these things, and that's what they're doing. They're practicing a hobby that they enjoy. That does not mean that they will publish a book. And I'm not saying that they will never publish a book, but it's like with sport. I'm using sport as an example. I know that I am never going to play in Wimbledon. I know that I am never going to be in the ATP Tour or be a top anything, but I still play it well and I still enjoy it. And I think we have to look at writing in certain aspects of that, because otherwise we're misleading people and we're taking away the joy of writing. So people can go to these things and just enjoy it and write, and they might put a collection together in the local library, and this is all beautiful, honest ways of spending time. But it does not mean that that person will find an agent and will sell a book for €100,000. Does that make sense? Like I think and as you were saying, it's because there's so many more people writing now that I think there's this expectation that anyone who writes thinks that they can get to that place, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree with you. And I mean, getting to that place is so difficult now because there is so much competition for so little space.
Yeah.
And I mean, you and I write character-driven literary fiction. It almost feels like there isn't as big a space for that now than there used to be. That it's, splashy debuts are in fashion, and
Yeah.
so the quiet novel tends to get overlooked, I feel.
Yeah. And, I was talking to Sean Hewitt about this in Maynooth last week. I was talking about his novel Open Heaven and lots of other character-driven novels. And plot with a capital P is one thing, like the propulsive moving forward and things always happening. But there's the internal plot, I think that there's this idea of like that the minor dramatic moments in the external world might not be huge, but if that is huge to the character we're dealing with, then that for me is plot enough. That is plot. There's the internal plot, there's the feeling of what it creates and the emotion. I think Sean's novel Open Heaven does it very well. It's all, it's kind of a plot that doesn't really take us to where we might want something to happen, but it's all in the internal way of the character, the principal character, the protagonist, that we feel that plot, if that makes sense.
Totally, yeah, absolutely. We better return to the novel because we're talking about writing it out. So, I mean, this novel spans generations. It's about the lives of ordinary people living through extraordinary moments. And you deal beautifully with the relationships and connections with them. You have two characters, two point of view characters, two timelines. And I think that the things that I picked up there, what I felt that the novel was it was about love, it was about tenderness, it was about challenge and acceptance. So I wanted to talk to you about Oisin. Like you felt to me like he's a boy who grew up to be a man, but he's still very much a boy.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think it's more to do my view of Oisin, and it's why I chose the second person. It's why he was always going to be second person. It was non-negotiable for me, which is, again, in the industry, second person is harder to sell. Dual timelines are harder to sell. I feel like he doesn't know himself. And I feel that he hasn't, as an adult, given himself the time and space to reflect on who he might be. I think he's just going with it and living the life he thinks he should live. And obviously there is a huge trauma that he hasn't fully remembered or fully acknowledged or fully grappled with. So I think that is kind of why he's a you. I feel like he doesn't know himself enough to say, I did this. This is who I am. I am Oisin. I feel like there's this disconnect between what he does in the book and what he thinks. And a lot of it is kind of what's unsaid or what's not done, undone. Like there's a lot of him thinking about doing things and then not doing it, or then thinking about not doing something, but then actually doing it, And I think he's flawed. And I wanted to create, my next book, Interlude, is not as kind or as tender. I think it's a bit, but I did want, I wanted to write a book that, has heartache and heartbreak and trauma and sadness, and yet there be a kindness to it, and a kindness to how we treat or how they treat the people in their lives, even when they're treating them badly, or even when they don't realize the effects of their actions. I think there's a kindness in what they want then to do, if that makes sense.
That's exactly it, actually. Kindness. Yes, that's the perfect word for it. There's a kindness and a compassion there.
Yeah, exactly. And I think in those times, the book could have taken a very different way. I could have written it, the same plot, the same characters and the same things happening, but that, you know, they're different in their moral viewpoints, or they're different in how they hold trauma, you know, because like Oisin holds a trauma, but and it destroys him in certain ways and makes him do things, but he's not resentful to the, you know, he doesn't hold it against the people closest to him, you know?
And I mean, the book deals with the power of memory as well, and that the traumas that holds us. And I think it's really, it's there's so many things, so many threads in this novel, which is beautiful. They're beautifully woven together. He's learning about himself. He's learning about his mother. It's very tender when he returns to Ireland, and he has the difficulty of going to see her.
Yeah.
Because she's not going to be the mother he remembers.
Yeah.
I remember what that's like myself. What that was like myself going to see my mother. You know, it's the fear of will I be recognized? Will I be known? And he's dealing now with the normal strains of, you know, he's just returned to Ireland with his wife and his daughter. His wife is Brazilian, trying to get a mortgage, all those things. I mean, his life. So I kind of felt very much he was somewhere on the spectrum, autism spectrum. He's almost kind of not quite there.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't think of a spectrum, or if he is. I think it's more damaged. I feel like he's damaged in some way, and that prevents him from, like, even as you said, he returns home and he talks a lot about going to see his mother in the opening chapters, but he doesn't go, you know. And as you said, it's that fear, or it's that kind of, I think he's afraid a lot of what it will bring. And that's why I think like he's complex, because I do think that at the end of the day, I think he does know that there's something there that he hasn't faced head on. There's something there in his childhood that isn't quite available to him, and that has been blocked or buried for whatever reason. And I think that all of the choices that he makes are ways of preventing him from finding that out. And he only finds it out when he's at that most intimate moment with his mother, and it's a movement that she makes with her hand, and it reminds him of a word, of the memory, and then it all kind of comes in. So I think it's almost that idea of like he comes from this, you know, a loving but troubled past, you know.
Yeah, and he seems to be, he flounders a lot. Now we're going to be trying to be careful. It's hard to talk about a novel without and avoid spoilers, because
Yes.
we'd love to talk about the whole novel with you, but you know, I hope new readers will come to it and discover it. But he's very much kind of floundering around a little bit, and so is Bridget in her timeline, in her remembrance of her timeline.
Yeah.
Of her life. She's dealing with a major challenge. Can we say what that is, do you think? Or
Yeah. No, that's
yeah. Oh, you say it, your book.
Yeah, no, so Bridget, like you find out in the opening chapter, which again in the first draft you didn't, I was kind of holding this back, but you find out that she's 17, she's pregnant, out of wedlock in 1970s, rural Cork, and she has to basically face the implications of that through different realms. You know, she has like the family sphere, then she has the community, then she has friends, school, so religion, you know, so there's all these ways that she has to be strong, you know. And I think she is and I do find and it's one of the things that I was conscious of, especially the editing phase, of like, the women are strong characters in the book, you know, like Nina, Oisin's wife, she knows stuff, and she's like, okay, I am holding on to this until a better time that we can talk about it. Kathleen is the strongest character in the book. She's for the time the grandmother, the time she lived through and what she does and how she approaches things. And Bridget has taken on that spirit. So I was conscious that, they flounder, that nice word you use, they flounder much less, even Bridget in terms of this, like, yes, she's petrified and she has moments of panic, but she's very headstrong and she's sure, and I think, again, it comes from that tenderness and love that herself and James are not like, they are romantic sweethearts and they are very much in love and within the book stay together. And, there is this idea that, like, being pregnant in 1970s Ireland, you have a very heavy history there, the Magdalene launch, you have all of these things that happened and being sent to England for abort. And I didn't want, because I know of people who got pregnant out of wedlock and they had a baby, and I don't see that story as much. And I wanted, to explore that. Then, okay, yes, a girl gets pregnant in a time where she shouldn't get pregnant, in a place where she shouldn't get pregnant, in a context, a historical context that she shouldn't get pregnant, and yet she keeps the baby and is still loved by those closest. Obviously there's disappointment and shame and all those that go with it. But I wanted to bring that storyline to, like, kind of front and center,
Yeah, and I feel it's an important one, and it's you render it beautifully, and her her discomfort with kind of, what are they going to think? The neighbours will talk, that sort of thing. It's, you do it beautifully. And she is so strong, and you are right, the ladies are so strong in this novel.
Yeah.
I think it's very much about the challenge of love, the challenge to love, to fully love as well. I feel that Oisin is almost holding back. He can't fully give himself to either to his wife or to his mother or to anybody. He's so wrapped up in himself, I think, because he's so confused.
Yeah. And that goes with the disconnect. And I think the second person helps that narrative. I think the second person narrative creates that disconnect, the disconnect between, as you said, not being able to fully give himself in certain moments and through certain relationships. The second person helps create the disconnect between who he thinks he is, who he shows, that lack of kind of self-awareness and understanding. So I think that was why it was such an important choice for me to write him in the second person, because it does help in what I was trying to do. And I know, like, I wanted to shake him at some point, I wanted to shake Oisin, like, Jesus Christ, man, like, just fucking come on. But I think if it was in the first person, I think he would have become more unlikable or more self-centered, or that I would be too strong, or would give the idea of a character that it isn't, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was a really, really artistic, really great artistic choice to go with second person.
Yeah,
definitely worked for me. The place of, we haven't talked about the place of language really yet in the novel. It's obviously the language of remembering.
Yeah.
So language features very strongly there. There was a line I highlighted that I wanted to read. I'll just find it here in my notebook. Actually, there were a couple of things, a few things that jumped out at me, but it was like listening to music. The words were all known, but put together in adult talk they became obscure and inscrutable. And later, it's just on the same page, you open a bottle of wine and pour a glass. From the kitchen counter, you lean around the door into the sitting room. And Ailish is talking a mix of words and sounds with a doll in either hand. And the sight of her leaning forward on her knees, living another world inside her head, makes you feel warm, and yet you fight the urge to cry. It is so easy for her to communicate with you, with the doll, with the very air around her, which she talks to when it is cold or too hot. The sound she can make, the notes and tones that are not quite words but contain all the meaning in the world. I thought that was so beautiful. And it's the how old is Ailish?
Ailish around 3, 4,
Yeah, so she's
5.
so she
Yeah.
can't speak, but it's kind of still supposed to
Yeah.
be talk.
Yeah. You know, when kids get excited and they're on their own and they're just kind of like making more sounds than words, you know?
Yeah, and so there's Ailish's language, there's the language of the mother, there's the language of the heart, which they're all speaking, which Bridget speaks to James in all the time,
Yes.
but fearfully at times because she's not sure is he going to stay with her? You know,
Mhm.
will he be a father?
Exactly.
Um, so language plays so many roles in this. So would you like to talk to us about that?
Yeah, and again, like it comes, as I said earlier, like a little bit. I was living in Brazil, and language was quite, it was everywhere for me. It was, the more fluent I became, the more comfortable I became, the more I felt like myself again. And there is that idea of like, I started to think, well, if language, and I always have said this, like language is the only way, not the only way, but the most important way, the most common way, the most frequent way that we communicate with each other. Yes, there's touch and there's gestures and it's intimate, there's sex and there's kissing and whatever it is, and they are all a language, but the one we use all the time is the spoken language. And it's so insufficient. Like I'm just like even with I have 2 daughters and my wife or my parents who are elderly now, and all of like I don't have the words. The language is not good enough for me to try to describe what I'm feeling, what I want to say. And also there's the idea of language once spoken, there's the reaction to language, which we have no control over. So, I mean, I think everyone knows you go to say one thing and it's picked up another way, and suddenly something you wanted to happen has gone the other way. And it's like, well, how did that happen when I am in control? I'm authorial. I have, agency over what I'm saying. So I think language is always fascinating me that like, and again, maybe it's one of the reasons I write is to try to get the language to do what I want it to do in ways that I find it's insufficient in my day to day. And I think there's a lot of the idea of the book that is what is unsaid or not understood, misunderstood, misremembered, So in that part that you just read, it's kind of it's not language, and yet it's the cleanest, clearest language that Oisin can understand from his daughter. There's a connection there, and he gets it through what she's mumbling or how she's doing it. And then there's all of the things that are unsaid. There are the things that Oisin thinks but cannot say. There are the letters that Bridget writes to James but never sends. There's all of this idea that what we want to say, and the characters may be realizing that even if spoken or even if Bridget sends the letter, that it won't do what she set out to do. And I think that's true of life. Language fails us constantly, especially when we need it most, when we see someone that we love is hurt, or when we want to show something deep within ourselves. I find that language is insufficient. So I think it kind of filtered through to all of the characters in some way, that language fails them, or that language, not even it fails them, but that language is not enough for them at that moment that they need it.
Yeah, that resonates with me. I mean, I often feel when I'm writing something that even though I maybe rendered a beautiful scene and I still haven't, I'm missing, it's almost like I can't express deeply enough the essence of what I'm seeing in my mind, or the essence of the emotion I want to capture, that words are inadequate.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
exactly. And then when we're reading and a writer does it, it's the most magical feeling, like, I mean, I talk about it all the time because I'm obsessed, but Anne Enright for me is probably on, I don't know, 5 out of 7 days, she's my favorite writer, and reading her, like I'm reading her essays now on writing on life, art, and the world, I think it's called. But there's stuff that she does with language that I'm like, yes, that is exactly it. I understand exactly what she means. I understand the emotional resonance, and I am there, and I feel that I am seen. I feel that something that I have felt or experienced is exactly as I have gone through it or felt it. And there's something quite universal and grounding about that.
Yeah, I totally agree with both Anna and Wright. Yeah.
She's so fucking good.
Why do we even bother, Patrick?
Yeah.
So, just looking at the time there, we should probably start wrapping up. Anything you'd like to say before we do a final reading? Anything you'd like to add?
No. I just, one of the things I've always saying, because a lot of the time people who might listen to this podcast or people who go to writing festivals are emerging or aspiring writers themselves, and I think, again, it's that twofold thing of what I have learned in the last year and a half or year is focusing too much on the industry rather than the art can be quite detrimental, and for many reasons, for the writing itself, for your mental health, for everything else. And also the idea of just turning up, as writers, like, a lot of it is just turning up. A lot of it is sitting down and doing it when you don't want to do it, enjoying it when you do it. And again, for writers of all different levels, writing for the sake of what writing gives you, I think is really important, and I lose focus of that a lot, especially now, like, with my second novel, and I was writing it, knowing that I wanted to publish this novel, and, so there is that, but I feel when you kind of get into the crux of it and you're in that moment, it's about, as you said, it's about exploring, it's about that kind of exploration of the self, of the word, of the page. And yeah, I think a lot of the time that's enough for me, Yeah,
no, I agree with you. And I have to constantly remind myself why I do this.
Yeah.
When one's getting rejections and so on, it's like, why? And it always comes back to the same thing. I have to do it. I love it.
Yeah.
And even if only one other person reads what I write, that's enough for me, because I'm communicating at least to somebody what I'm seeing in my mind, what I'm feeling, and my characters need their stories to be told.
Yeah, and again, not everything needs to be read. I mean, I've written, like the other day, I remember it was World Book Day tomorrow, and I was sitting down and I'm trying to write every day. So I just wrote a piece about the disaster of World Book Day last year, because my daughter went as something I can't remember, but I arrived at the school and Jesus Christ, everyone was dressed like professionally, and I thought, holy God, and I could see my daughter was kind of a little bit upset, and I was like, oh my God, I failed her. So like, I just wanted to write that out. Now, it might never be seen, it might never, I might never publish it, but it was important for me to write. And who knows, in a year or two, I might get a scene or a sentence. So I think it's important, again, to write for writing's sake, and for what that gives you. Yeah,
absolutely. So shall we finish with the read?
Yeah, talking about writing for writing's sake and it not being read, I might read, I don't know if it's a bit long, I haven't read, I normally only read that piece, but I have a letter from Bridget. So Bridget writes letters and she never sends them to James. And it's more for her understanding of what's going on at that time. So Bridget's writing this letter. She's in the middle of being pregnant and dealing with everything that's going on around her. And I suppose she feels a bit disconnected from James at some times. My wonderful James, I'm writing you a letter. It's silly, I know. Maybe I will not post it, and if I do, I will probably see you before you receive it. And I'll feel foolish and I'll regret it. And yet I really want to try to make sense of everything going on inside my head. To put the words on paper and for you to read them alone, and maybe in years to come you'll find this and read it again, and we will be in another time, maybe another place, and looking back we will say, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't bad at all. For look what we have now. The truth is, there are moments that I cannot wait to see what we will have. I'm sorry for not asking you more about how you're feeling, about how these weeks have been. It's just what is happening to me is so momentous. It feels like with every day that I change, the world does too. Subtle changes. The leaves fall as if being cradled. The sun, in the moments it breaks behind clouds, has a voice. It is like the air around me hums. Even the water from the tap tastes crisper. Since the wedding, it's like there's nothing more to think about apart from our baby. Also, and I don't want this to sound mean or to belittle anything you might be going through, but everyone and all their issues are so distant now, so remote that I find it hard to remember how I ever cared. Because inside of me is our child, our child. It is the most beautiful thing to think that I have a child inside of me and that we made it, and that one day we will hold him and he will be molded by our love. It feels so unique, this feeling, yet I know it is probably the most universal of all feelings. Of course, there are other times, normally in bed, that the darkness of the night outside is inside the room with me. And there's always that other life. I think it will walk side by side with us, that what could have been. I know the training will be starting soon over in England, that you wish you were there. I know that, yet I'm glad you are here with me. I think too of the person I thought I would become, and if she will fade into something like a dream, if I will recognize her in myself at all in the future. And the world, James, the world seems so small now, and my life so simple, and the news, everything that's happening up north, that poor baby blown to pieces in the car bomb, and I watched it with Mammy and Daddy, and I thought of how we can protect our baby boy. Then all the other news that came after, no matter how important, just seemed so silly. Isn't that terrible? And the two lads found shot dead in the car. I wanted to feel something so desperately, but I didn't really even feel pity at the time. I just thought, how silly, how useless. It doesn't make sense to me, but on a different level now. It is as if it cannot penetrate me in any real way because there is this love now. I see it almost as an armor. Of course, afterwards I thought 100 other things and questioned what will come of the world. I spent the night wondering about the love I feel and the strength of it. And then I thought that if all the mammies feel this and all daddies, because I know you will feel this too, then if there's all that love, just so much of it, James, then how can a man shoot another man dead? Writing it now, I get the urge to laugh at the senselessness of it. I then thought of how I bullied poor Mary back when we were kids, in private too, so no one ever saw. Not badly now, but nasty in ways. And I thought then there must be a badness in me, a hate, I suppose, or not hate, but hate's friend who walks hand in hand. I suppose some people are born with more of it. I don't think you were born with much at all, James, but you are an exception. I used to think there was nothing of it in you, but the day you walked away from me, when I told you, I saw then that you weren't free of it either. I think everyone has it in them, and some of them never meet someone like you or get the chance to have a baby, or some have no roof above their head, or have parents who beat them or grandparents who abuse them, and then I thought that maybe the love isn't enough for all that. That it would be too late by the time a boy is a man for a love to have any real effect at all. Do you ever feel these things? I was thinking here now I'd never be able to say all of this to you if you were sitting across from me. First, I wouldn't have the courage, I suppose. Then you might interrupt, or I might say it the wrong way and could offend you. It's just I feel these things so intently now. My thoughts are swirling all the time, but they feel solely mine for once. I feel like they really belong to me. I know I am thinking them. I know they are mine. Before, I used to feel like I was just repeating something I'd heard, or maybe I was saying something for the sake of it, or I thought something, it wouldn't sound like my own thought. Does that make sense? Like my thoughts were being thought inside my head without me. Now, though, I feel like I can think clearly. Even though my thoughts go quickly and sometimes veer without warning, I know I am conducting their path. I am in the driving seat. It is because of our baby. The way I think now has purpose. Each thought is important because it is helping me to become a mother. That is what I think, like I'm on this intense and weighty lesson. You must be reading this thinking I've gone half mad, and maybe I have. And besides, I've gone off point. The main reason I wanted to write to you is to tell you that I truly believe we will be fine. To be honest, I think we will be so happy. Not that I am not now, I am. It's just I think our baby will just speed up all that love and happiness that was coming our way anyway. I thought I'd look down at this little pouch of a belly I have and want to hide it, but the truth is I do not. When I put my hands to it, I feel a calming pride. Your parents would be happy to know that it almost feels holy. I've been thinking a lot about God too, not the God we read about in the Bible, but a higher presence, because sometimes what I feel is so strong, I think there must be something higher than us all. I'm going off point again. I'm sorry. I was saying I do not care about what people think. I really don't. I know you do, and I know I did. We spoke so much about it. At the start, I thought I'd die of shame, the looks and the whispers. It must be harder for you, I know. My parents being how they are, and yours being how they are. You know what I think? It's only you that really matters, how you see me. And even that right now, with this mounting, cascading feeling of love I have for our child, even that does not seem important. Again, not in a bad way. I'm sorry if it sounds rude or that you are unimportant. That is the furthest from the truth. It's just, I cannot give it much time because my thoughts always move back to our baby. James, we will have a baby and he will be brilliant and he will be loved so boldly and so wildly that I think the world will be better. That we will balance something out in the universe, that our love will tip the scales in a way. Our love for him, I know it might be a girl, but also our love for each other. I feel that changing too. I love you wholly differently now to how I loved you a few months ago. So I suppose that's the main point of the letter, to tell you that. I love you, James. You're mad, Bridge.
Wow, so beautiful. Oh, yeah. Start crying again.
Yeah, but again, it's just I wanted to finish with that because it is one of the things that she never sends to him. You know, so it's it's that idea of language and getting it out, and it's still not being enough. You know,
it was such a beautiful, touching part of the novel, and there's something magical about the author reading their own work.
Ah, thank you. Yeah, I haven't read from it for ages, so it's nice to kind of. I've been so busy with novel 2 and novel 3 that yeah, it's nice to come back to it.
Patrick, it's been absolutely wonderful to talk to you. I hope we'll introduce some new readers here, which we have beautiful, beautiful work, and we'll get you back for novel 2, hopefully.
There you go. Absolutely.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Patrick.
Thanks a million, Jen.
Stay on with me for a moment.
Yeah, will do.